Hi guys, I'm on page 445 in your workbook, lesson 7.5. Today we're going to be comparing fraction factors and products. So we're going to look at a fraction and a whole number or a fraction and a fraction and decide how that's going to determine the size of the product. Is it going to be greater than, less than, or equal to? Okay, so how does the size of the product compare to the size of one factor when multiplying fractions? I'm actually going to skip over to the bottom of page 446. I like how these notes are written out for us. Okay, so again, we're thinking about greater than, less than, or equal to. So if we have the product of 1 and 3/4, we want to fill in, will it be greater than, less than, or equal to 3/4? Well, we know that any fraction times 1, or any number for that matter, times 1 is going to equal itself, right? Thanks to the identity property. So if we multiply 3/4 times 1, the answer is going to be, or the product is going to be equal to 3/4. Okay? So I want you guys to be filling these notes in along with me. So if you need to pause at any time, go ahead and do that. Okay, so there's three ways. I'm just going to label these A, B, and C. Okay, so if we multiply a fraction times 1, it's always going to be equal to itself. Okay, the identity property. It will be equal. So let's write a fraction times 1 is always equal to itself. Whoops, I'll go down here. Okay. Next, if we, actually I'm going to add here the identity property. Okay. Now, if we multiply a number, a fraction times a number less than 1, which is going to be a fraction, any number that's less than 1 is going to be a fraction, it's going to be a part of a whole. Okay, so if we multiply, this is saying if we multiply a fraction times a fraction, that number is always going to be less than the number that you're multiplying, because when we're multiplying, like I said, a fraction is always a part of a number, so it's a fraction is less than 1. A fraction is, I'll go down here, is less than 1 whole. Okay, 2/3 is less than 1 whole. 3/4 is less than 1 whole. 4/5 is less than 1 whole, because 5/5 would equal 1 whole. Okay, so the product of a number less than 1, which is going to be, I'm going to underline here, product of 1, product less than 1, is going to be less than 3/4 or whatever that number is, and less than the other factor. Okay, and the last example here is if we multiply the number by a number that's greater than 1, the number is going to be, so now we're talking about a whole number, any fraction, I'm going to write down here, a fraction times a whole number greater than 1 will make the product larger than the number, or than the fraction. Okay, it'll always be greater. So we're talking about if we're multiplying by a number greater than 1, so that could be 2, or 3, or 4, or 5. Okay, so it's always going to be, so if we multiply the product by a number greater than 1, 3/4 will be greater than 3/4, but it's going to be less than the other factor, because the other factor is going to be larger than 1. Okay, so we have 3 examples here. If we multiply a fraction times 1, the product will be itself. It'll be the same fraction, just like any number times 1 equals itself. If we multiply a fraction by a number less than 1, we're going to have a smaller product, okay? Because we're multiplying by a number that's less than 1. Whereas on the other hand, if we multiply a fraction times a number greater than 1, the product will be greater than that fraction. Okay, so those are the 3 things that you need to know when we're comparing the size of the product to the 2 factors. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. These are your notes, and we'll use these to complete. You'll hear me talking about these again when we're doing some more problems, some more of the share and show problems.